Welcome to Passion for Sound, the channel dedicated to thorough and honest reviews of headphones, earphones, DACs, headphone amps, other components and accessories. Basically everything audio related except power amps and passive speakers. My name's Lachlan and my goal is to explore and discuss all kinds of audio topics, even the controversial ones, to help us all find more enjoyment from music. Thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review. This is kind of a micro review today because I've already touched on these headphones in a fair amount of detail in my Hi-Fi-Man and Nanda review, but I wanted to circle back and make sure that I properly covered off on some other details talking about the gold Planar GL2000s. We've got channel patron John to thank for sending these through for me to have a listen to, test, review, etc. So John, thank you for sending these through and giving me a chance to share this review with everybody else.
You, my love. You, my love. You, my love. You, my love. There was something you were screaming about, but I close my ears cause I don't want to hear it anymore. God, it's always something about me, never something about you, always something about me, only me. What's up with that? What's up with that? Have you ever asked yourself, what's up with that? Oh baby, why won't you take a good look?
Now I should mention that John had installed a couple of Duconi nuggets to the headband to improve comfort, so I've only tried these with the Duconi nuggets on there, and I have to say they were very, very comfortable. The nuggets, that is. The headphones themselves were also quite comfortable, no complaints at all. They're a decent design, they've got a bit of weight to them, but they're not too heavy, and the nuggets certainly made them very, very comfy for extended use. While we're talking about design features and bits and pieces, we've got a pretty sturdy feeling headphone here. It's got metal yokes that adjust with a nice notch system. We've then got the ability to swivel the headphones with a fair range of movement in most directions, and so all in all, they're going to allow you to get a pretty good fit on most head sizes. Obviously I can't comment on the stock headband without the nuggets because I didn't want to go removing them and costing John a pair of Duconi nuggets. So instead I used them exactly as they are, and I found them pretty comfortable across the board. As I said, they're not the lightest headphone around, but no issues here for me. The GL2000s here have this really nice patterning on the outer grille, and whilst it probably does nothing at all for the sound, it does make them an attractive looking headphone. Between the black leather headband and pads, the silver metal and possibly plastic on the actual cups here I think, you've then got the gold, and there's a little bit of a black kind of wire mesh over the grills here that all adds up to a very attractive design. At $639 US, they're not a cheap headphone, but they're also not at top tier levels, and I do think they look the part of a more expensive can. Another thing going for them is a very simple 3.5mm connector on the bottom of each cup, and more importantly, a really nice cable. Now I'm not sure if there's options with the cables in terms of the terminations. John sent through to me his 4.4mm Pentacon connector, but it's a really nice woven cable with a nice quality sheathing or insulation on the outside, and it's much nicer to use than something like the horrible Hi-Fi-Man and Nanda cable. So I've got to give Gold Planar credit for that, and the fact that the headphones come with a beautiful, large, hard case, similar to what you'd have seen with Audeze LCD headphones in the past, and also the ZMF headphones. So all of the accessories that come with the GL2000 I think are fantastic. They also provide two sets of pads, so there's the stock leather pads that come fitted, and then you've got a really interesting style of fenestrated leather. So fenestration means it's got this sort of perforation in it, but what's interesting about these is they've then got this kind of, I don't even know what fabric it is, it's some kind of synthetic, soft, satiny kind of material on the section that touches your skin around your face, but it's also this interesting D shape. So it sort of molds to the shape of your ear, and I'm assuming that's done deliberately to change the way the sound approaches your ear and the space between the driver and the area around your ear. I'm not entirely sure, but it does make a significant difference to the sound, as you'll see shortly on screen with the graph. Before I get into the details about the sound, I just want to flag the fact that there's a few things about the GL2000 that just have me a little bit concerned. The general build quality from the outside, the pad quality, the case it comes in, the cable, all of that looks fantastic. But when you go to remove the pads for the first time, what you're greeted with looks like something that someone's done in their backyard. There's some felt lining between the front plate that screws onto the cup and sort of sandwiches the driver in place. There's some felt lining there that appears to have been cut by a 2-year-old with a blunt pair of scissors. As you'll see if I take one of these off, it's a really bad look for a headphone at this price point. So in this section here, it looks as though there should be a full covering of felt here, and it makes me wonder if Gold Planar have managed to buy these drivers from somewhere else, decided that they sound better without the felt, and done a rough job of cutting them after it's all been sandwiched together or something. I'm really not sure how they got to this point. I actually emailed John when I got these and said to him, hey, did you do some modifications, because I can't review them if they're not in their stock form. He came back and said, no, definitely not modified, this is exactly how they came, and he felt the same as me, that it was a little bit of a concern. I think the biggest issue that I have with this is that it's so haphazard looking that I don't know if there's going to be significant variance, A, from one cup to the next, but also from one pair to the next. So it's possible that you might hear what I have to say about these today and then have a different experience yourself because the felt's been cut differently on the pair that you try. Now, I don't know how much influence that has because I've only got one pair I can check, but it is a bit of a concern that there's a lack of uniformity in the way that's been cut, and it just makes me wonder what other areas there might be some dodgy workmanship going on the inside of the cup or the sourcing of the drivers in the first place. Putting that aside though, the biggest question of course is whether they sound any good. I think in short my answer to that question is they sound okay. In isolation they sound quite good. But the reason I'm hesitant is that if you've watched my Hi-Fi and Ananda review, you'll know that I do prefer the Ananda overall. If you're looking for a detailed, specific comparison between the two, I'll put a pop-up later in the video so you can jump across and check out the Ananda review. But in short, what I'd say is, whilst they do sound quite good, I don't think I would suggest buying these when for just about $60 more, you can get a much better headphone in the Ananda. In fact, the only reason not to buy the Ananda over these, I think, is that the cable from the Ananda is nowhere near the cable quality from the Gold Planar. That's not a good reason to not buy a headphone though, because aftermarket cables are relatively cheap and easy to buy, and also when using the 3.5mm terminations for the headphone end, it's pretty ubiquitous now what you can connect it to. So unless you're specifically looking for the Gold Planars because you've heard the Anandas and you didn't personally like them, or maybe you're looking at a pair of these second hand, I don't really see any other reason to recommend the Gold Planar GL2000. The sound is good overall in general in isolation, but I just don't think it stacks up to the competition directly. In case you are still looking at them though, let me tell you a little bit about their sound. The GL2000 have a really nice bass extension and a pretty linear bass overall. That's certainly one of their strengths. They've got a good reproduction across the board from the bass and up into the mid-range. Where things go wrong for me with them is the way they present the mid-range and the treble. They've got quite good treble extension and a relatively smooth frequency response if you take a look at the graphs on screen. The problem for me though is more in the qualities of the treble and the mid-range. Somehow something's gone wrong with the GL2000s in terms of making it sound compressed and closed in and lacking in overall dynamics. The sound from these to me almost comes across as if someone's tried to over-enhance the sound somehow. Like they've tried to make it sound more special, and in the process they just try too hard. That's particularly true when using the solid leather pads, and I think it's because of the massive dip when you go from that nice flat linear bass up into the mids, and then it drops away into a bit of a trough before coming back up in the treble. The reason I think that might be the culprit is because, for me, the fenestrated pads with this interesting sort of D-shaped section there, these to me produce the better sound, and if you look at the graphs, the biggest differences that I can see are that there's less of that trough and then less of the treble lift coming after it. So I can only assume that it's about having a slightly more linear, and it's not at all linear, but a slightly more linear frequency response from bass through the treble using the fenestrated pads compared to the much more sort of peaky and trophy sound that you get with the solid leather. And what I mean by peaky and trophy is that even though the bass section is nice and flat and the treble is relatively flat as well, it's the fact that you've got bass and then mid in a hole and then treble coming up again creates these three distinctly different frequency responses within the one headphone. That's all I can put it down to. I'm not a qualified headphone designer, so I'm only speculating here, but I think that's what's going on and making the gold planers not the most enjoyable listen. They're completely fine, they're technically okay, but they're just not, for me, a fun and engaging listen. I found them a bit fatiguing, a little bit forceful, even though they don't get sibilant or overly bright. They just left me kind of ready to take them off after any listening session I had. The Anandas, on the other hand, whilst they can be a bit bright, never left me feeling like I just wanted to get them off my head. If somebody said to me, these are the only headphones you can ever have, I wouldn't be heartbroken or miserable, but at the same time, they wouldn't bring me the pleasure that I want from a pair of headphones. And so with that in mind, I'm going to keep this pretty brief and reiterate what I've already kind of said, which is that I don't see any major reason to buy a pair of GL2000s. If you can pick them up a fair bit cheaper, then perhaps they're worth a go. But if you're looking at a brand new pair, just spend a bit more and get yourself a pair of Anandas. I never take any pleasure in producing reviews that don't have some kind of here's who it's good for and here's who it's not good for approach, but I just don't see any argument for the GL2000s over other headphones on the market. There's nothing that I'm hearing them doing particularly well that I think makes them a better choice than anything else. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Remember to check out the Ananda video if you want a bit more of a comparison with the Anandas, particularly now that I've recommended those as a better option than the GL2000s here. But other than that, let me leave it to the music, say happy listening, and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.